I mean, what's so fascinating about this film is even though it's relatively recent history, only 70 years ago, there are probably so many people in this country that had no idea that this was happening. What were you coming in with the knowledge of? Did you know much about this time?
No, I also knew absolutely nothing. I mean, so much of it I didn't. I didn't know, that Britain ruled over India for 300 years. I didn't know that it was that period of time. I didn't know that there was so much violence. I didn't know that the Muslims and the Sikhs and the Hindus lived together peacefully before the seeds of partition were sown, through division and fear many years prior to that. And didn't know, I think, how many generations of people were and continue to be affected by the decisions of a few.
It's a kind of an astonishing thing. Was it quite a long learning process then when you were getting ready for it?
No, not. I mean, there's great material out there, and the script is based on a couple of great books, and there's a lot in there, specifically Freedom at Midnight, and study, reading Nehru stuff and biographies of the Mountbattens and of Edwina, and it didn't take that long. Really.
And is it very helpful that there's quite a lot of video footage?
So helpful that there's a lot of video footage, yeah. And we also had access to some family films, and there's, today there's just a lot of information.
And she's an astonishing character, and she's obviously very notable for her voice that I think now seems, it's really what a lot of people talk
yes,
like. But now
it is quite shocking.
Is that a difficult balance to strike? Because obviously you want to be representative of the person, but also you don't want to veer too much so that it's a distraction, I suppose.
Yes,
is that
no,
hard?
it is hard to make that judgment, and as an actor, one can only hope that you're heading in the right direction, and you're right that it's not too much of a distraction, but it's a very different way of using one's mouth than I use my mouth on a daily basis. You do. It's a lot of it feels like a mouthful.
So what's the trick? What's the kind of the reason you learn?
I can't remember.
It's just you get into it and then you have to go.
Yes.
I mean, what's so interesting about watching this film now is how topical it also feels. Last night you were talking about how the events in Syria were kind of going on as you were filming it.
The events in Syria have been happening for a long time.
This wasn't there weren't new things.
Yeah.
Does it feel like it's gathered even more momentum since then?
Well, I think there is a lot of talk, as you know, right now about borders and about walls and about division and about fear and about hatred and about immigrants and about moral responsibility, and a lot of those topics are within this film, and one sees in the events that take place what happens when there is the politics of division and fear, and how many people's lives are affected negatively because of that, and also what happens when there are people who are attempting to discuss, spread tolerance, having Gandhi there in the film, and what he wanted, what he stood for, what he believed in, was quite the opposite of what happened, and and seeing the people of India respond to a spiritual leader in the way that we see them respond in the film, and the difference between that reaction and that sense of unity and commonality, and as opposed to what then started to transpire, is heartbreaking.
And you've been very, very clear, you describe yourself as an activist. Does that feel even more important now to use your voice?
I think so. I mean, I try. It's hard to know where to speak up and where it's best as an actor to let the experts do their job, because I don't really have an interest in putting my head above the parapet, but there are certain human rights issues that I feel very strongly about that speak openly about, and I usually tend to stick to those subject matters.
For the best. And there is conversation about whether or not that's appropriate. We're very close to another massive award ceremony where that's probably going to dominate conversation. Do you think it's right for when people have a platform to use it, not necessarily yourself, but when someone like Meryl Streep gives an impressive speech like the one she did?
I think that I was very moved by her speech, and there was a lot that she said that I thought was very courageous and truthful, and so I was very much in support of that. It's hard to know how much is appropriate and part of the problem to begin with, and I think that's something that is a big conversation right now, and in how we move forward, and how much people have felt, how many people around the world, specifically we're talking about the UK and the US, have felt like their voices haven't been heard, and getting an understanding of that, I think, for the first time, or being made to listen because of the decisions that are being made for so many. So, yeah.
Just lastly, Neil Gaiman has said how much he'd like to see you on there, at least on the shortlist, to be the new Doctor Who. What do you think of that? Is that something you'd like to do, or is that nice to be in the conversation for?
Sure, absolutely nice to be part of the conversation, but not something I necessarily have time for.